Dear Lord, we submit ourselves to you as your servants and the servants of the people of Hampstead who've placed their trust in us. Please allow every word that is spoken and every action taken to be in the best interest of Hampstead and tonight the county. The Lord bless this meeting and our town. And also a moment of silence for all the law enforcement officers over the last couple of months who've given their lives in service to their departments. Pledge. Amen. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, Tammi.
Mayor Nevin.
Here.
Councilwoman Duff.
Here.
Councilman Renahan.
Here.
Councilman Roark.
Here.
Councilman Thomas.
Here.
Councilman Unglesbee.
Here.
So we're going to run through the top part of this agenda. It shouldn't take any more than 15 minutes, and hopefully the two other commissioners will join us in the meantime. Minute approvals from the public hearing on February 13th and the council minutes from February 13th.
So moved.
Second. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Thanks. Before we vote on the closed meeting from February 23rd, I have to read this into the record. After posting and scheduling a meeting of the Hampstead Town Council, the meeting was held on 7 p.m. on February 23rd at Town Hall here at 1034 South Carroll Street in Hampstead. Presiding at this meeting was myself. Present during this meeting were the council members before you. And Tammi Ledley was invited to the meeting as well. Pursuant to the authority in the state article subsection 10-508 subsection A, a motion to go into closed session was made by council member Thomas and seconded by council member Duff to discuss a personnel matter and invite the town manager, clerk of the council to attend as well. Personnel matter was discussed. The closed session was adjourned with a motion by council member Thomas and second by council member Roark, and the meeting was reopened. The open meeting was adjourned with the motion of council members Duff and Renahan. Take a motion to approve the closed meetings.
So moved. Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Thanks. Tammi, you're up.
For our Main Street Revitalization Project, town staff attended the 8th partnering meeting last month. If anybody noticed, a new traffic signal has been installed at Northwoods Trail in Route 30. At this meeting, we also discussed the possible upgrade and painting of traffic control device poles at the other 3 intersections, the traffic signals in the project, and we'll discuss those more at the end of the council meeting. We also discussed the Hampstead Fire Department's request of widening their driveway apron in preparation of their new fire station and hall on Main Street. By widening the driveway, it will eliminate one of our lamp posts, but the lighting should be sufficient because there'll be lamp posts across the street, and then there'll be lighting in front of the station. But the State Highway is going to look into that to make sure we have enough lighting. As of today, the project's on schedule, but the town and State Highway are still discussing the stormwater and water pipe conflict in the first phase of the project. Upcoming work includes installation of curb and gutter, street lighting foundations, sidewalk and stormwater pipes and inlets between Northwoods Trail and Ralph Avenue. The gas line work will continue to move from Lower Beckleysville Road to Gill Avenue. And just a note that motorists and citizens should plan for extra travel time. Crews may be working up to 4 different work zones within our town at one time. The new housing development north side of State has 4 houses under roof. The first model home should be open for viewing this month. Town staff, along with our inspectors and J.A. Myers, conducted a preliminary inspection of the water and road infrastructure, after which a portion of the letter of credit was released. Lorena and I attended a meeting hosted by the Maryland Department of Planning and was in Westminster regarding a Better Maryland. A Better Maryland is MDE's cooperative process working with local governments, recognizing common priorities, and identifying strategies and resources for responsible growth and resource protection. It was a town hall type of meeting, and MDE gathered quite a bit of information from the community as how they can improve their services. And they were actually, and this for the commissioners too, the Maryland Department of Planning was actually very impressed about how well the towns in Carroll County Planning Department work together. I attended the town manager's lunch in Westminster and met the new Sykesville town manager, Aretha Adams. She's a lovely person. Christy and I attended the monthly Hampstead Merchants Association meeting this morning. And the mayor and I met with the Carroll County Department of Economic Development to discuss further development of the North Carroll Business Park behind Fuchs. For our finance department, Cheryl and I met with the new auditor to discuss how we are going to work together, and also staff met to begin preparing for the 2019 budget. On behalf of the town, Christy has applied for the Heart of the Civil War Heritage Grant. There's a possibility, I emphasize possibility, of up to a $100,000 reimbursement grant towards the cost of the proposed new lamppost on Main Street. The process for this grant is very competitive, so if we are not awarded a grant this July, we can apply again next year. We would like to thank Delegate Shoemaker, Senator Reddy, Commissioner Weaver, the Hampstead Merchants Association, and the Mayor and Council for their letters of support that we submitted with the application. The Department of Public Works has been busier than usual working on renovating Pump House number 6. It was built in the 70s, so they renovated it by installing new pipe, equipment, and repairing the concrete floor. And I'd like to take a note, by hiring Daniel, he has experience in working with concrete, so we didn't have to contract that out, since one of our public works staff can now do concrete. And Misty's been a tremendous help to Public Works and the town office. She completed her first quarterly water billing meter reading process. And if the council would like to see, this is a before and after of the pump house number 6. The town staff continues to work on several projects, including Florida Rock, Tractor Supply Company, and Melanie Acres 3 properties. Lorena and I met with a potential buyer of another undeveloped residential property to discuss our annexation and impact fees. In addition, we met with Hughes Trash, who's interested in purchasing the Nash property at 613 Hanover Pike for storage of their roll-offs. We met with a small construction company that's in the process of buying the JJ Trash property at 591 Hanover Pike. And the Board of Zoning Appeals will hear case A-222 on Tuesday, March 20th. This case is an appeal for a change in non-conforming use at the 521 Hanover Pike. The property was rezoned from IR to BG during the 2010 Community Comprehensive Plan process, and the use by JJ Trash was characterized as non-conforming use at that time, and this construction company would continue as a non-conforming use. The annual Hampstead Manchester Community Expo was held at Manchester Valley High School on Saturday, March 10th. A special thanks to Christy, Kevin, the mayor, and council members Roark, Unglesbee, Renahan, and Duff, who are in charge of the town of Hampstead table, and to officers Thorne and Cranshaw for working the Hampstead and Manchester police table. We are also very appreciative of State Highway and C.J. Miller, who had tables next to us. And I heard the expo was very well attended. It was very successful.
That it was.
We have some upcoming contracts and requests for bids. The town received bids for the janitorial services contract that runs through March 2021, which will be awarded during this month's council meeting. A request for bids will be released this week for patching of various town roads, and that contract should be awarded at the April council meeting. Discussion on the solid waste disposal services scope of work will be held at this month's council meeting, with the request for bids being released next month and the contract award at the May council meeting. And I just want to let everybody know my staff report will now be online. So the Word document will be on our website if anybody would like to read it.
Thank you. Questions for Tammi? All right, Marlene.
Okay, just briefly, a report on the Hampstead Farmers Market. A vendor update today. As of today, over half of our vendors from last summer have already committed to return for this season. We have 2 new vendors signed up with potentially 3 additional ones. So I'm still contacting folks who offer products that we don't currently carry. I've sent out letters to our 8 current website sponsors for renewal of their support, and I'm contacting 6 additional businesses to see if they will support us this summer. And funds from those website sponsors help pay for our musicians, magicians, face painters, and additional supplies and things that we use at the market. 3 market vendors participated in the Community Expo this past Saturday, and they were very pleased with the turnout as well. And we're going to try and do a better job next year of notifying our market vendors about this annual event so that they have an opportunity to participate. That's it.
Okay, Wayne.
Okay, the Hampstead Train Station Flea Markets 2018 series starts on May 26th, Hampstead Day. It's going to be the 4th Saturday of the month, so it'll be June 23rd, July 28th, August 25th, and September 22nd. Music in the Park, the 2018 series starts on June 2nd with Black Swan. July 7th will be Dick Berryman and the Country Express. August 4th, it'll be the Three Amigos, and September 1st will be Bone Dry. I owe the police department some road closure documents, and I'll get that done this week and to them. The music's going to be from 6:30 p.m. to 8:30 p.m. each night, and they'll be held at Memorial Park, right in front of the old Hampstead School. Tree Commission, we were approved as a tree city and also received the Plant Award for our efforts over the past year. Our next meeting is March 22nd, and we'll be looking for donations for spring planting. We'll see if we can scrape together some money, seeing how we blew everything last fall. Get something in the ground before the new budget comes up. On a personal note, I'd like to thank my thanks to everyone who shared their condolences with me over the passing of my mother last month. And also, everybody might have noticed my hair's gotten longer over the last year. I am donating my hair for wigs, and I'm going to be participating in the St. Baldrick's Foundation haircutting this coming Sunday at Martin's East. And I have some information on it. I got contacted today from them. They're a little short on shavees, so if anybody would like to get a free haircut, they're welcome to join us. You just go out to stbaldricksfoundation.com on the web, on the World Wide Web, and sign up. So, thank you.
Thank you, Wayne. Jim?
Okay, Planning and Zoning Commission of Hampstead met on Wednesday, February the 28th, 2018. First up was the approval of a new deck going in the rear of 1362 North Main Street. Thomas Yates is the owner and had the appropriate building permits from the county to do this project. Really, the only reason Mr. Yates had to come to Planning and Zoning was that the property's in the Main Street revitalization area. Plans well within code, and it was approved. Next up was the approval of the concept plan for the Tractor Supply Company store, which is going in between the Joseph A. Bank and Black & Decker properties on the south end of town. All county agencies' reviews were positive, and the plan met all requirements in the town's concept study review, and the concept plan was approved. The last thing on the local agenda was the introduction of the preliminary plan for Melanie Acres. As usual, there was discussion with them about their stormwater management system they are proposing, along with the number of dry wells they will be installing per property. We were also informed by the builder that they will be installing berms on the lower part of the property to stop any possible water runoff in large storms. The commission also requested that the builder put in a natural tree line on the west side of the property to separate the new property from the existing neighborhood. The last thing was Price Wagner from the County's Department of Planning presented the Commission with the draft of the Hampstead text section of the Carroll County Bicycle Pedestrian Master Plan. This deals with existing bike and walking trails in Hampstead and also any future trails we may introduce in the future and how their plan relates to our comprehensive plan. We looked it over. We made several small revisions to the text. For example, changing Municipal Park to Panther Park everywhere, and so they revised it, and we will formally approve it at our next month's meeting. And that's all I got.
Thank you. Joe?
Okay, from Parks, we're hoping to have the new skate park installed by the end of this month. Public Works has already removed the older equipment and are ready for the new equipment as soon as it can get to us on schedule. Attached is a drawing of the plan that was proposed for the park. We've already received a number of phone calls in person and inquires of emails. Evidently, we've had quite a few skaters wandering around Town Hall that has quite a bit of opinions about the skate park. If you could just mention that we anticipate a new park by the end of the month, would be perfect. Kevin also mentioned that we're going to have to put a small skim coat, a black top, to get the park done and to make it look.
Well, the skaters were extremely concerned. They thought everything had been stolen.
Well,
We had quite a few skaters riding their bicycles to the front.
we stole it. But we'll put it back.
It's going to look much newer and cleaner. Thank
Yes,
you.
they were quite happy with it.
Dave?
Water concerns. February 2018 average water usage was 317,000 gallons per day. March 2018 average water usage so far has been 324,000 gallons per day. Rainfall total for February 2018 was 3.5 inches, and rainfall total so far, March 2018, is 1 inch. Would like to say one quick thing. This year, once again, I'm the chairman of the Maryland Municipal League Carroll County Chapter Scholarship Fund for 3 lucky seniors in Carroll County High School. We have everything on the town website, the applications there. Basically, just to give you a quick idea, the students need to live in one of the 8 incorporated towns here in Carroll County. They need to complete the scholarship application, prepare a written essay on a specific topic, which we have this year, and have a municipal official representative certify that they live within an incorporated town here in Carroll County. These essays need to be here to Town Hall by Friday, May 4th, 2018, and hopefully we'll have 3 really good scholarships students this year.
Thank you. They're not
Thank
lucky,
you.
they're worthy.
Exactly. Correct.
All right. Police report. Before Chuck starts, I'll introduce you to our interim chief, Chuck Rapp, who serves as a major in the Carroll County Sheriff's Office, and we're happy that he's helping us out while we switch police chiefs. Sheriff Jim DeWeese was very helpful in volunteering his services to us, and so Chuck, without further ado.
Thanks, Mayor. Council members, Ms. Ledley, good evening. County council members, welcome. It's always a pleasure to see you here. The police report for Hampstead for the month regarding traffic safety, 234 citations and warnings were issued. We had 7 crashes reported to us, with 2 that were on the bypass at the 482 circle. As far as community involvement, we conducted 426 patrol checks, were made from businesses and schools. Crime-wise, we arrested 9 adults and 3 juveniles, 2 for driving under the influence, 1 for theft, 1 for domestic assault, 1 for driving suspended and revoked license, 2 for violation of protective orders. 2 civil citations were issued for possession of marijuana, and 2 for possession of marijuana were arrests because they were over the minimum 10 grams for civil citations, and 1 for disorderly conduct. Community policing, we're continuing to do business checks and continuing to do checks on the schools, and that will increase a little bit as we've seen some issues throughout the country, just to make everybody feel safe and to make sure our schools are protected. We'll increase that a little bit. And as far as training for the department, probably a little bit minimum this month, but we sent Officer Vanek to CN2 training, which is the training for the NCIC, the National Crime System. That's my report.
Questions? Thank you.
Thank you.
My report, let's see, we had the If I Were a Mayor school visit, so I went to Hampstead Elementary School and Spring Garden, and I put up a little slideshow of Hampstead history right on through and asked for questions at the end. The questions are always very interesting. This year's two that stand out. Well, I always get the what's your house look like, because they look at they know the president lives in the White House, and they know the governor has a nice house in Annapolis. So I flipped my house up after showing them the other 2, which always gets some comment. And one child asked what I was going to do about North Korea, and so I told him that was a little bit outside my pay grade. So, but it's always interesting to hear what's on the 4th graders' minds. As Tammi mentioned, we had the economic development. We had a meeting with Jack Liborn about the property up north of Fuchs, and we'll see if that moves forward to some kind of land planning and finished stage, so that businesses can go there in a quicker fashion than totally ground up with raw land. We had a meeting last week in Westminster with the Carroll County Maryland Municipal League. Everybody was there. We had Amy Yingling in to talk about small businesses, since she does that on a statewide level. As Tammi mentioned, the Community Expo went very smoothly on Saturday. Todd Calhoun and his group do a great job of organizing that, and it was really, really well attended. Well over 1,000 people attending, almost like a Saturday afternoon at your farmer's market. And then finally, the newsletter will be out. We've had some tweaks to make to it, but the newsletter will be out here in the next couple of weeks, so everybody should see that in their mailbox as well. So, without further ado, we have the commissioners here tonight because they want to talk about additional utilization of 1400 Panther Drive, which is formerly known as North Carroll High School. So, I don't know what the plan is, who's talking, what the plan is, so it falls in your court, gentlemen, and I think Tammy's got a microphone so the people online can hear you.
See, I don't think we had a plan about what we just came here tonight because what we're asking for is for the remainder of North Carroll space. Right now, we're looking to put the Board of Education in there, and the police already have a training academy in there, and they're going to have another, I wouldn't call it a precinct, but an area with a couple officers and so forth in there as well. But there's, my understanding is about 25,000 square feet that's not going to be utilized by one of those 2 things, and that doesn't count the gymnasium, which will be used for community use. or the auditorium which would be used for community use, or the hopefully upgrade, we're still working on that, of the field with a turf field for community use. But for the other 25,000 square feet, we're looking for rezoning so we can put some business in there, so we can make some money off of this, so it doesn't lead us continuously. And I
Okay.
guess that's what we're, coming here to talk to you about tonight.
Well, all right, go ahead, Dick.
If I may add, we started here with the this whole thing with the need of the state's attorney to move space. The sheriff needs space. We've decided to move Carroll County Public Schools to North Carroll High School. It's taking up quite a few more feet than we actually thought it would. It's due to the size of the hallways and those type things. So we have a lot of additional space that's going to be used. The budget was $12 million, and actual costs have gone up a little bit, double that, I guess, if we look at things here, and additional capital needs of the roof and HVAC in the future. We have some, we discuss things periodically, and the Hampstead Town Council said they don't want to change the zoning on anything. Hampstead feels, I think they were wrong by the closure of North Carroll, and Hampstead wants the fields, gymnasium, auditorium for recreation use, and that's happening, has been happening. We want to keep room for growth, so we have to do something with this building. We inherited it, and now we have to do the best thing we possibly can with it. And the commissioners have pretty much decided no new construction. I mean, we're not going to build new buildings, and we're going to use the buildings that we've been given. So in the putting these things together, the long-term operating costs for Carroll County Public Schools using 95,000 square feet is, I guess, not the most efficient use of the space, according to Mans Woodward and their projections here recently, but it's what we have, and we've given them 2 months to come up with a little better projections as far as cost on this whole project.
Is that company you referred to, your
Yes.
engineers?
Yes.
Okay.
To actually give us a little better idea on cost and how this is going to go for this and the Winchester building, which the state's attorney and the sheriff would be moving into in those areas. So we're trying to narrow down some cost with this over that, I think, 2-month period, 60 days, I think we gave them. We originally had, I guess, a preliminary meeting with some members of the town, I think when this whole thing was coming down. What are we going to do? And, one of the ideas was maybe some kind of business initiative at that time, and we were just throwing things out, talking at that time, I think in Delegate Shoemaker's office at that time. But we're down to that point in this phase 2. We have the first part of this put together. The second phase is we have about 25,000 square feet left. And so we're asking for the town of Hampstead to help us with what are we going to do with this space. Now, we have some other, I'm going to go off on a tangent here a little bit.
Not surprising.
Would you like to make a comment first?
Well, I think, if we're going to stay on this topic, is that a different topic? Or?
No, this topic first, if you want.
Your district.
Oh, boy, they're being very congenial tonight. Anyway, that's why I'm sitting over here. We have a space. But looking at this whole thing, some ideas were brought up to me in the past week, and or in the past week or so, we've really had some discussion about, is this the best use of our money here with the extended cost, and the idea of maybe making it a middle school, closing the other 2 middle schools, moving them into this school is an idea I want to throw out, and that's no background, no backing to this at all at this point, other than we have some ideas on it. We don't have any numbers behind it or anything, but if you had those schools and we made this 1 middle school instead of 2, we'd feed the high school here in this area. So, and I haven't run this by commissioners here at all. I just want to throw the idea out here and get some feedback publicly as far as the idea of it. I don't know how it would go. I don't know how it would go over in the community. I don't know how it would go over financially. It's a thought, and we've had some community members make comments on this and have voiced some concern about it Saturday. Commissioner Wentz and I heard a lot of it at Manchester Valley. And so I just want to throw some things out and have the other commissioners discuss things and talk about it.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's probably the purview of the Board of Ed, although we own the building now, so I'm not even know how that would play out. But I think going back to the original conversation, and I know that there was a meeting that we had at Delegate Shoemaker's office. I know there was another meeting that we had here with the mayor and town manager. And, you know, before we started down the path, I think what we were trying to understand is if we looked for some sort of a combination use for the facility, could we accomplish that? Obviously, we're going to have ongoing operating costs. My understanding or my takeaway from it, and it could be wrong, but my recollection was that if we could come up with business uses that didn't compete with Main Street and that the town had a say and an involvement in the process, that this was something that would be something we could probably work towards. And so, you know, I think that was, at least for me, part of why we went ahead with the Board of Ed and the other aspects of the facility, because at some point, you know, we've got a trip, you know, on operating costs to develop there. Just in bits and pieces of conversation, we're kind of hearing unofficially that that's not the perspective, and so that's why we felt like it was really important for us to be in the same room, because we're going down a path based on one set of assumptions, and if those aren't the right assumptions, that's certainly something we need to look at, first of all, before we spend any more money on the building or move anybody, because we don't want to go from one situation to a worse situation. So for me, it's just a matter of trying to get an understanding of the process. I mean, I'm assuming there's a process to go through, and we're not asking you to change zoning tonight or anything else. But I think it comes down to, was that understanding correct, and what are the parameters we should be talking about to try to make the most use out of the facility.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. The North Carroll High School building is a real problem for the taxpayers. We're looking at $28 million to move Board of Education up there. And then there'll be another $20 to $30 million in HVAC and roof costs for a total of nearly $60 million, okay? That's a train wreck. We've got to hit the reset button and fix this. Now let me make something perfectly clear. You hold the power. You've got the power, not us. This is your town. We have to respect what you want to do. So I will deliver the same message to you that I deliver when I'm doing a private sector contract. Not asking you to do anything tonight. Just want to float some possibilities. Leave your checkbook home and leave your pen home. We're not going to ask you to sign anything. We're not going to ask you to agree to anything. We're not going to ask you for any money, nothing like that. We just want to float some possibilities, or I just want to float some possibilities. Now, Mount Airy has faced a situation which in some ways is parallel to the challenge that you face here in Hampstead. The county wanted to develop Lyshare Harrison, which is a 200-acre tract just a few blocks away from Main Street, but of course the challenge was, well, how do you develop that without cannibalizing Main Street? If you develop a professional office park, just as one example, and you put businesses in it that siphon foot traffic off of Main Street, it's a zero-sum game. So from a marketing perspective, the challenge that Mount Airy had to deal with is how do you make this a complementary marketing proposition? How do you set it up with businesses so that the office park becomes the syrup and the Main Street is the pancakes, and they complement each other? And in fact, after about a year of work, I'm going to distribute to you a zoning ordinance that Mount Airy adopted. And the number one premise of this was, how do we develop elsewhere in such a way that it complements our Main Street businesses and actually causes them to flourish by creating more peripheral traffic for things like restaurants, retail businesses, service businesses, etc. So going back to this issue of possibilities, and given the fact that you have control over this, and it's a train wreck for the taxpayers right now, I want you to just imagine, hypothetically, a genie came out of a bottle and said, we've got a gift for you and for the county. We have a 280,000 square foot building, and you can establish any rules you want with respect to how this building would be used. And whatever we do with it, there'll be an opportunity for joint benefits. potentially in terms of spin-off traffic for your Main Street and perhaps even revenue, although that has to be negotiated. Now, in the Mount Airy ordinance, which I will give you before I leave here today, they have pages and pages of prohibited uses because they don't want to cannibalize their Main Street. I just want to give you an idea on how they approach this. So prohibited uses, I'll just read a few of them. These are all prohibited because they wanted this to be complementary. Automobile service centers, commercial and retail use, mini storage, outside storage, vehicle repairs, vehicle sales, standalone bars, gas stations, public utility buildings such as power substations, freestanding communications, chemical, concrete, manufacturing, garbage transfer stations, paving, petroleum, all these things were prohibited. And they had a very narrow list of what they referred to as principal permitted uses for this office park, and drawing the parallel, hypothetically speaking, just visioning right now, what would happen if we did something like this with this school. So here's what they said their goal was with this zoning ordinance that the town of Mount Airy put together. It says the town council has determined that a professional district, employment district, would foster economic development within the town, and there would be other benefits to the town and its residents by enacting this new zoning district. And I'm going to oversimplify and say that what they basically set forth as their parameter was this, that anything they put in this office park would have to be self-contained and fit inside the building. And from outside the building, you couldn't tell what was going on inside the building. So, for example, some of the things they said we could do, because they're really very similar to what's going on in a school or a university building anyway. Things such as science, or research, or lab work, or health, or meeting rooms, or computer labs. No retail, no commercial. Because as you drive by the building, you can't tell what's going on inside the building. Is it a school, or is it high-paying jobs for the townspeople? Is it a university building, or is it a research lab for Apple or IBM or Microsoft? You can't tell from outside the building. And the idea that I'm hoping to float with you this morning is to at least keep in your checkbooks at home and your pens in your pockets, if you would just consider the possibility of a very narrow range of uses that would be transparent to a school use. Because let's face it, when teachers go into a school, they have meetings, they work on computers, they make phone calls, they talk to each other, they teach. Some of these are the same things that go on in commercial industry. So a new zoning district with a very narrow list of uses, can't tell what's going on from the outside, because it's invisible inside. It's not commercial, so it's not going to lead to a bunch of traffic, be neighborhood friendly. Yet it would enable us to put this building into CoStar, put it up for lease for maybe 10 or 15 years with the idea we'll always take it back if we need it as a school again, and generate productive revenues with it. And I'll speak only for myself. I don't represent the board with this, but I've always thought we should have offered some kind of a joint sharing of this with the town, so there was upside for both of us, a win-win with respect to the revenues. Because quite frankly, ladies and gentlemen, a 280,000 square foot building, the opportunity, I mean, this can be looked at as a problem, or can be looked at as an amazing opportunity to generate huge amounts of revenue, millions of dollars in payroll for the town. Very, very profitable. And I really think we need to hit the reset button and maybe consider opening up the possibility of a very narrow range of professional uses that would be consistent with what would go on in a school or university building anyway, so we can get this building back into productive use, save the taxpayers tens of millions of dollars, and most importantly, create complementary business, employees that would go into your Main Street, eat at your restaurants, buy things at your retail establishment, use service industries such as haircuts and shoe repairs, etc., and really create wealth. I think there's a tremendous opportunity to create wealth if we're willing to hit the reset button and think about this creatively. Thank you.
What are we doing, opening here?
Yeah.
Sorry I walked in late. I was at a neighboring town, so this is 2 town council meetings in one night. Extra credit for Commissioner Wance. Thank you all very much. I think the only thing I'm going to say, I'm going to be brief. I'm not going to go on a long dissertation. I'm here to hear what your ideas are. I think there needs to be better communication between us and certainly you folks to get to a reasonable conclusion here. And I'm going to leave it at that.
Okay.
I'd like to propose that we have one member from town council and one member from commissioner's office that work on this to start moving things forward for phase 2. I think we need to have a lot of discussion to have. My colleagues and I need to have some discussions. I brought up an idea some community members brought out here that I'm open to, and I think we need to let the Board of Education know that we're open to some other options here. I am anyway. I'll get some, talk to my colleagues later on this, but I think we need to, at the present time, just have 2 people, point people that we appoint on this to start focusing the phase 2 of this building and what we're doing, and narrow it down before we get any further down the line as far as spending fund or putting funding toward anything. We have about 2-month period here before we're going to get started, and it has to happen in that time as far as where we're heading. Or we're going to have to, we already have a plan in place for the Board of Ed over here and those things, and it would be heading that direction. But in that time, we have time to look at maybe a few other little alternatives and see where we go.
Can I present an alternative? Can I go first? Go ahead. Thank you. You're the boss. You know, I'd volunteer myself to talk to any one of you anytime you want about the future use of the high school. Doug, I mean, I remember those meetings well, and you know, they were, as the process was going on, or before, you know, during the process, and you know, they were spitballing ideas and whatnot. But I think the council's been pretty consistent. The people of Hampstead have been pretty consistent that they don't see a rezoning for a business use in that school, in that building. Complementary uses aside, Commissioner Rothschild, I mean, we have a fairly structured zoning code that allows various uses, and we could figure out the complementary side of it. You know, it baffles me, the planning that this Board of Ed does. I mean, Marcia's here tonight, and I appreciate her being here, but I mean, I guess this goes to the staff level where they make these estimates 10 years out of what the population's going to look like, the school population's going to look like. And my understanding is, you know, the scenario that they anticipated when they were looking to close schools is not the one we face today. They were looking at a continual downward glide of giving away hundreds of kids a year in the school population, and in 1 year we increased by over 100. So and apparently their estimations have now flattened out and show a flat curve, or no curve, downward or upward for the next 10 years, which I don't believe. I think we're facing a different growth scenario than Carroll County's faced in a long time. We're starting to see some residential growth come back. We're not going to see it in Westminster until they get their water situation squared away. We're clearly going to see it here. We're clearly going to see it in Mount Airy. Tawnytown continues to have some. But the other thing that's, you know, the biggest driver, and I've seen it in my neighborhood firsthand and all around the town, is that these houses are getting sold. The empty nester syndrome. There's a lot of folks my age who are moving on to wherever and downsizing, and then overnight, and my neighborhood is an example, 9 kids show up, you know, at least 5 from out of county that nobody had in any plan anywhere. And I think that's reflected in just 1 year in those numbers. And when they can't get 1 year of numbers right, how can they get 5 years out right? And I think that's really got to be something that they break the mold and really look differently at, bring in somebody who understands generational changes. There are those kind of planners out there. And I do think, you know, everybody in this community does think this building is going to be needed as a school again. It's a when, not an if. So having a business in there, you know, with all it comes and all the different changes that it has, we're not getting buy-in for that change. And until this school was put on the chopping block, the only thing that was needed for it was the ordinary, ongoing maintenance items that any building does. And yes, this is a building of size. But you had maintenance, you had a roof that was going to be needed at some point, but the guts of this building were as good as any building in the county. So I would say that, you know, you've got a committee that's being started, I get the acronym right, RSCC, committee being started, And apparently that building won't be considered because there's other planned uses for it. But if it only takes a couple of months and these people are looking for a couple of months, why wouldn't they look at that and talk about saving tens of millions or hundreds of millions of dollars, Commissioner Rothschild? You have a perfectly good building sitting there. You have a perfectly good building sitting in New Windsor, or it may have already been sold. But there's clearly things you can do to break the mold, look differently, look creatively, that may, in the long run, serve the county very well, serve this community very well, and serve the budgetary concerns of the county very well. There's, that's the thoughts that we've heard about up here.
So I think it's important, first of all, we're not here to speak for, advocate for, or against the Board of Education. That's a totally separate issue. The issue is that that decision was made. The building is in our hands. And my understanding is we would need 15,000 more homes in the county to accommodate another high school reopening. You can shake your head if you want, but I believe that's true. So whether it is or it isn't, and I think we were way more than spitballing. We had 2 meetings, we brought maps, we went through lots of detail, was the idea that if we were going to make an investment here, we were going to be able to try to do something that could generate some revenue. If that's truly off the table, and I think there's ways to do it without disrupting the building or really being able to leave it able to be restored, the Board of Education changes are going to cause more disruption to that building than what those businesses would do. And so if that's truly the biggest concern, I think we have to really look at this and say maybe the best thing to do right now is leave well enough alone. We're partially inflating the numbers, and we really shouldn't be, because whether we needed a roof or HVAC at some point in the future, those needs existed, whether it stayed a school, didn't stay a school. So adding those numbers into the mix only makes it sound much worse than it is. It is what it would have been in those regards. And, I think Commissioner Rothschild has it exactly right. It's got to be what the town wants. I think it would be foolish to continue to go down a path of disrupting the school, putting the Board of Ed in there, investing more money in it, if it's not what the town wants in terms of where we're going and the opportunity to offset any of the costs at all. And so, I think we've made a commitment to try to leave Parks and Rec and those kinds of things where they are. But, at this point, maybe the best thing we need to do is just take a deep breath, not move anybody, and just leave things as they are. I think, we thought it would, at some point, it is not to recreate the decisions that were made. Unfortunately, the die was cast on some school, whether it was that one or another school, as soon as we built an extra school we didn't need. And in that case, the enrollment projections, I think, were within 5 kids 5 years out in advance. And so maybe things have changed since then, but the decision that was made with the people that were looking at the information at that time, it should have been very clear that by the time that school was finished being built, it wasn't going to be necessary. So all that aside, I think what we're trying to figure out right now, and I applaud Commissioner Weaver for being creative. He's extraordinarily creative, and I think Commissioner Rothschild's got a very different perspective. What we have in front of us, however, right now, is we have this building, we have a plan, and if that's not the path we should continue down, and that plan did include asking for zoning for at least part of the building, if it's not the plan we ought to go down, then that's what we should be talking about. Stopping what we're doing, and then either just letting things sit, which is perfectly fine, that's an option, or coming up with some other plan. But to go down a path, because I think right now the idea is somehow if we fill the building with either government stuff or things like that, all we're going to do is shift things around and add more cost. And I don't think that helps anybody out. So I just think that's really the question in front of us. And if what you're saying, and I take it to be true, is true, then I don't think there's much progression to be had as far as what to do with the building, unless I'm missing something.
Why wouldn't holistically, now this RSCC committee is supposedly looking at the whole county, right? Which is your purview. They're looking at the whole county.
Not our purview.
Well, they're looking, so your purview would be, you guys are looking at the whole county, put North Carroll back into the mix and see if there's a use for it.
Or we have no role in that.
The role you would have is,
Who funds them?
the role would be,
Well, not you guys. That's right. I'm sorry.
let me go on. Your role would be just put this in the mix and see if it makes sense. And if they're looking at it for the next 2 or 3 months and they find a use for it, there's people that have ideas. I'm not sure about 2-for-1 on a middle school, but there's ideas that are out there that would save you money in construction, hundreds of millions of dollars in construction, and let them at least throw it into the mix so they're looking at the entire situation and not one as it currently is configured. What's wrong with that? That's some creativity, some originality, and maybe with these people serving on this committee, a fresh viewpoint.
I have to say, I wasn't at the meetings where the ideas were spitballed or went over, but I did get feedback from Commissioner Weaver and Commissioner Howard. It was my understanding that if we made the investments into the building of the auditorium, keeping the gym open, putting $1 million into the stadium so we could draw more people in here that would benefit the town of Hampstead, and all three of those things will benefit the town of Hampstead, we would have the police academy precinct, whatever it was at that time, because it's evolved since then. We would have part of the use at the time, it wasn't for Board of Education, but for something, and a part of the building was going to be for some type of renting out or leasing out of a particular part of the building. My understanding is that was basically agreed upon when Commissioner Weaver and Howard came back and talked to us about it, and when the maps were all drawn and there was different colors for this and that. I have to say, this is the first time I've heard that, from what I'm gathering from what you just said, you've got no intention of helping out by working with the zoning with us. But that is, I have to say, and it's up to you guys, but it's the first time I've heard that.
I didn't hear that, though. Chris, I thought you did say something about complementary uses might be a possibility.
Complementary uses could be a possibility, but I don't see them being business uses and us changing the zoning.
I think the only time business was mentioned is we said, would an incubator fit a public use?
About research.
So,
that's the only thing we mentioned.
And these were conversations held between 3 people. And, I go back and deliver the message, and Dick has heard this message pretty consistently, that, there's really no appetite for changing the zoning. It's a public use. And Commissioner Frazier, yes, we want to do positive things for the building, but if you consider the positive things, we're trying to make up a lot of what we lost by not having a high school there.
And I understand that. And that's looking from my perspective, or a different perspective, I would guess. That's why I was committed to upgrading that stadium, making the auditorium used for other groups and all coming in, having a gymnasium for use, so people would still be coming in here and still be going down to Main Street and buying retail and all that. Just in my opinion, upgrading that stadium, put a turf field in, better lighting and so forth, the draw on that would be tremendous. And then you'd have the Friday night lights or the games and so forth, and you have stuff, not just Friday night, but all the time people coming in and then going to Main Street and using it. I thought that was a tremendous benefit to the community. It's one of the reasons why I put it up there. And also with the use, keeping the use of the gymnasium, upgrading the auditorium so more people could come in and use it for practices and plays and whatever they're going to use it for. It could be a lot of things in there. But I think my idea was that would kind of help resolve the problem that had happened. That would ease the pain to the community, I guess is a way to put it. But in order to put all that money into that, and it's going to cost us a lot of money to do all that, that we were going to get some help from the town council here about rezoning.
I would say, you talk about the auditorium, you talk about the gym, we talk about the fields. You have to keep in mind that to support North Carroll Rec Council today, those fields should have to continue in use.
Right, but we weren't be a turf field.
But no, the turf field's great, but other than a conversation, there hasn't been any money raising or any more conversation related to it.
But we put up $500,000. We put up $500,000. We voted on the last budget.
Okay.
Right now, that's the second part of our conversation. First of all, we have to get through the first part of this.
That's a side thing. $500,000 versus, it's a rounding error compared to 20 million or 60 million or whatever the number is today, isn't it?
Well, we were just talking about the turf field. So $500,000 is over half of what it costs to replace and make that into a turf field. So I don't think that's a rounding error. I think that's a commitment on our part to try to help out the community here. And what I was told when people came to me, and I guess it came to Commissioner Weaver as well about that They were committed to fundraising for the other portion that would make that a turf field and upgrade the stadium and so forth. That's what I was, again, told. I don't know how true it is or not, but we've already committed $500,000 to that. We've already committed money to fix the auditorium. We've already made upgrades to the auditorium, to be very frank.
Good.
And we're looking at doing other things. But my understanding was we were going to do all this, which is not a little thing, if you know, and get some help from the town as well. And the help from the town would be the changing of the zoning.
Okay. So is there any thought to, given what the county's going through, the school board, but the county's going through, is looking at all their buildings with this fresh perspective of saying, let's throw North Carroll into the mix and see what happens?
Could that be a possibility on our CESS?
I think that's a discussion for the town and the Board of Education to have if you want to have it. That's something outside of our purview.
No, it isn't.
No.
Well, okay, you can say it's not.
Well, I'm sorry, but you own the building, so the owner needs to say, yes, this is a good conversation to have, and we'd be willing to reconsider its use. Us going to the Board of Ed, they're going to say the county owns it.
I think we have made it abundantly clear to the Board of Ed, to the town of Hampstead, to the state of Maryland, that we're looking for a use for the building. I think we can comfortably say right now, if the Board of Ed finds a use for that building and they'd like it, we'd certainly talk to them about it because we're trying to fill the building. So if you want them to consider that, then I would suggest that, you know, that's something you pursue. I mean, I think that, you know, from what I understood, they've given their direction to their committee. But what I hear more importantly is that committee's not going to do anything until, or come up with any conclusions until probably November, December, before it even gets to the Board of Education, is that where we are is not necessarily where we thought we are, which is fine, which is why it is good to have this conversation. But I think what it says is we should not go down the path of this plan if we're not in agreement of where to go. I don't think you're particularly excited, I could be wrong, if we have to change the configuration of the building to accommodate the Board of Ed either. It's going to be very hard to put it back together as a school then.
That school was, the guts of that school are fine, and depending upon how you allow the interior to be moved around will make it easier or difficult.
Well, I think you need to look at what Mans Woodward's come up with, because we were saying the same thing.
We've not been privy to any of this.
Well, we're more than happy to share with you, but I think the bottom line for me is what I'm hearing is we need to slow down and probably not do anything else there until we have some sort of an understanding of where we're going, of any kind.
Let's talk about the numbers. Now, in the ideal world, and I feel your pain, you would like to see this reopened as a school. That's not impossible, but I don't think it's going to happen for at least 10 to 15 years. And it could. 10 to 15 years. So the question is, what scenario between now and 10 to 15 years from now is most likely to afford us the opportunity to reopen that building as a school? Well, I can tell you doing nothing isn't, and I'll tell you why from a numbers perspective. We're looking at $28 million to move the Board of Ed up, and within 10 years or so, we'll be hit with a roof and an HVAC system for another $30 million or so. Actually, the Board of Education estimated $40 million, so I'm going low. That's $60 million. I would knock the building down first, and I'll tell you why. Because I could build a more efficient, brand new 200,000 square foot building for $100 a square foot. That's $20 million. I could build a brand new building for $20 million, for less than it would cost me to move the Board of Education into that building. It's ridiculous. We'd be better off knocking it down.
All right.
But the point is this: I really think we could preserve options to reopen it at a later date with some productive, very narrow, very tight zoning that you determine, heavily restricted, so that the use of the building is nearly identical to what would happen inside the four walls as if it were an educational institute. And I'd really just ask you to keep an open mind to that, because the economy is booming right now. There's a demand for buildings. We've got nothing in Westminster. And I think if we put the thing in CoStar, that's the commercial real estate database, we could probably, using your zoning parameters, find an occupant that would pay us some good rent. Give them a 10-year lease, and then in 10 years from now, we reevaluate, and if we need it as a school, we'll reopen it then.
What if we reevaluate today, in the next 6 months, and then if there's no way in heck it's happening, then we have this ongoing conversation?
That's why I wanted to have a small committee. If you volunteered, and we have somebody we're going to set up with the county to have these discussions so that we start to look in the long short term here where we're going. I think we heard that, everything's on the table. I think if we could, the Board of Ed, I think we have some representatives here that they would look at things over the next couple of months, look at the possibilities of a condensed middle school or whatever. And at that time, before the money comes in or we have actual numbers in front of us of what it's going to cost, before we pull the trigger on the Board of Ed financially, we have an idea where we're heading, if that's even feasible or not from that committee. We'd have to speed them up a little bit, but they would have to give us an indication that this is possible or not. It's going to be part of their study. So what I'm recommending is we have a volunteer from your group. We'll have to decide who would represent us here to carry on further discussions along those lines.
Excuse me, I heard you're open to suggestions?
Yes, please.
Okay. So I took a few hours in the last 2 days and just pulled some information together. If you pass that out. Some of you probably know I work for Exelon. We pride ourselves on wind and solar, so I'm familiar with the industry. The proposal I put in front of you is to use North Carroll High School as a training center for wind and solar industry jobs. This would be an adaptive reuse of the school, which requires very little cash investment and no zoning changes. The need? The wind and solar installations are expanding at a rapid pace. Scientific American reported in January 2018 in their edition that 24,000 megawatts added in the year 2016, 60% of it was renewable resources. There are several wind and solar farms in Maryland, Delaware, New Jersey, and southern Pennsylvania, and soon there'll be wind turbines off the eastern shore in Maryland. There's not enough trained technicians to meet the need of the industry. I went out today, looked on Indeed.com. There are 22 pages of job postings for technicians for wind technicians. The wind installations are expected to grow from $73 billion this year to $124 billion by the year 2022. There are over 50 pages of solar technician jobs listed on Indeed.com. So there's a need for trained personnel. Partners, many of the wind turbine companies are reaching out to universities and community colleges to partner with them to provide training for technicians and to install and maintain wind turbine equipment. This is an opportunity to partner with a company. They'll provide equipment, materials. In some cases, they provided trainers and grants to get the schools going and up off the ground. The advantages: a reuse of the school as an educational center, no zoning changes required. Expansion of the Carroll County Community College campus. The program can run year-round. There is an economic impact to Carroll County. It's going to expand the Carroll County Community College. There's going to be people coming in here to take those classes. It's going to be an economic boom for Carroll County. And the North Carroll High School property is large enough that it could support installing a full-size wind turbine up there for training purposes. If you flip on the back side, the results: reuse of North Carroll High School with little capital investment. Carroll County Community College creates a profitable training program that will be needed now and into the future. Highly trained technicians for the wind and solar industry may stay in Maryland and even in Carroll County, with incomes ranging from $37,000 to $72,000 plus a year. And a bonus: as part of the training, you could have the students install solar panels in all the schools and county-owned buildings in the county. This would be a continuing savings to the county year over year.
So, Wayne, I view your proposal as promising from the sense that you're demonstrating a willingness to consider some alternative, creative, complementary uses. I've been out to Golden, Colorado several times, and there's an organization out there called NREL. Anybody know what NREL is? It's National Renewable Energy Labs. You've been out there, Dave?
Heard of it.
Spent quite a few hours out there, and that's what they do. They do research on all types of renewable energy labs. But just to springboard off Wayne's idea, whether it's renewable energy labs, whether it's medical labs, whether it's high-tech computer labs, whether it's research labs, all of these things have something in common. They really have a de minimis impact on the neighborhood, and they will all produce complementary business that would increase the wealth of the town. And Wayne, this could be the right idea, or maybe something similar to it. But I'm pleased that you're at least willing to open the door to this kind of creative alternative, and I'd like to see this kind of discussion expand, because we're still going to need zoning.
No, if you do it as a school,
That's what.
But it might not be a school. It might be a research lab. Suppose NREL came here and said we want to open up an East Coast division of NREL, National Renewable Energy Labs. That's not a school. It's a lab.
What you need to understand is that's 50 acres. We don't change the zoning on a piece of a building. We change the zoning on a piece of property. Once we change the zoning on that 50 acres to something else, there's nothing to prevent the owner from coming in and building another building on that 50 acres and doing the same thing with that, which would detract from it going back to school sometime in the future.
What about conditional use?
Same thing with conditional use. What are you going to do? Quasi-public facility, or public conservation now?
Yep.
So we're going to put a conditional use in public conservation that you can have businesses in there?
For
It's not going to fly.
What about, are you talking about the 25,000 square feet that's not used by the Board of Ed for this?
Yes, sir.
purpose?
Exactly. This is for the unused portion, and I apologize. You and I spoke about this months ago, and I've got two things I'm short on, money and time. And when I knew we were having this and my feet were to the fire, I went ahead and went out and did just a little bit of research. Had I had more time to prepare this, if I had the staff you guys had, I could go out and put together a pretty good PowerPoint presentation on what's available out there as the way of money, funding, grants, and if the community college, I'm sure, would love to have a profitable program that they could continue year over year, and that doesn't take away from the facilities they already have.
And again, I think this is the kind of discussion that makes some sense. I think I wouldn't underestimate how much the community college requires on public funding to be able to do anything that they do. So again, it may just be a shifting of public funding. But I think to your concern about the use of the property, we had similar kinds of discussions down at Sykesville when we were talking about Warfield. What we were able to accomplish there, because the town was the property owner, was that we were able to do things through covenants that didn't require us to do them through zoning. I agree, we can't kind of monkey around with zoning to try to protect the property, but there's a lot that we could do on this property with covenants, with us as the owners in agreement with the town. That having been said, I think that really we got to come down, and I think what I'm hearing, and it's fine, is that you want to take some time, look at other options. We got to do something with the Board of Ed. And so what I think I'm hearing is it's probably time we start looking at another option for the Board of Ed. Because
we never
said that.
Well,
I said you should give it 6 to 8 months and see what comes of this group. I mean, there's thought. You've already got the sheriff sitting in that building. What if you had a criminal justice magnet for a school, where you have on-site training for people who are likely have an interest in being deputies at some point in the future, or attorneys.
Mr. Mayor, we could do all those things. We have funding for none of it. So the bottom line is that we're about to have a multi-million-dollar significant investment. If we don't know that that's the thing to do, then I think we have to look at other alternatives. I don't think anybody's saying that you believe this is the right alternative for the school. We're trying to offset costs, and I this is the town's purview, so I totally get that. But I think us going forward with a plan to do something that's going to leave us with a big portion of the building that we don't have a direction for, and we have no way to offset costs. The whole idea of splitting that thing up and to looking at multiple uses and using the Board of Education as part of it was that we were going to try to find revenue sources to offset it. And that from the very beginning, the very first conversation Commissioner Weaver and I ever had, any public conversation we ever had, which were 3 or 4 public in-session conversations. But again, I think this has to be at your discretion. The problem is we have 2 other problems, and they're not your problem, so we shouldn't make them your problems. But we got to resolve those as well. And I'm saying if this isn't the right option, if we can't find anything at all to offset costs, if the only thing we can do is find other programs that are going to cost even more money, the best thing we can do, because maybe you're right about these growth rates, I don't know, but if you are, maybe the best thing to do is leave it the way it is. And we need to alter our plans to do something else, I think.
Richard.
$22 a square foot. Market rate's about $9.
Well, we have, I think we've already, pursue some of these things as far as dialogue in here in the near future. You have good ideas. I don't think we're going to make any decisions here tonight on that one. But I think, we come up with a representative and start working with you and discuss these possibilities and where we're going, where we are.
don't know what we're discussing.
As far as possibilities come up for phase 2 of the building,
Of the
So-
remaining 25.
the other 25,000 square feet.
Commissioner Howard, you're not willing to consider allowing the RSCC to look at this as a viable building within the inventory?
I don't think that's, from what I understood in terms of the way the Board of Education gave direction, I don't think that's something that they're going to consider. If that changes, then certainly, that's up to them. If they want to find a school use for that building, then I don't have any problem with them looking at anything.
Well-
But I think we'd have to have some idea that they were going to do that.
Aren't you the elected leaders of the county? I don't want to be confrontational here, but if you say you control the purse strings, and you can say, we think this is something you could look at, because in the long run, it's going to save us a significant amount of capital cost. Why wouldn't you do that? And then there's different things you can look at, from the wind and solar part to criminal justice magnet system to breaking up what a middle school is from 6th to 8th grade to alternative uses for a building. Another building may come open, which then may better be served as the Board of Education's look. Why not sit down and look at it on a holistic approach, since that's what seems to be in the cards?
Yes, please. Let us help you get out of this mess.
Well, no, I'd be glad to help you get out of this mess. The problem is that they just went through a multi-year process that took us in a totally different direction. I don't know what we think we would find in the evaluation that they're doing that would cause us to say, bring another building back online.
There's going to be at least 3 people sitting there, or 2. There could be 4 people sitting in seats that are different, right? Or that are there, and there's going to be 3 people at the board.
That's not going to change the work of the committee this year. The committee's working right now. I'm not trying to be argumentative. If they want to look at it, that's fine. But
It certainly sounds like you're putting an alternative to us that is, play with us or we're going away and taking our ball with us.
No. I think you're taking that the wrong way. I think we're saying we thought we had a plan, and if we don't, I don't want to continue down that path until we know what the plan is. That's all I'm saying.
Well, I'm willing to sit down with you and work out some kind of plan, but I think part of that plan ought to be, if you're looking at a holistic approach of every building the county owns, school and otherwise, why wouldn't this be in the mix? And why wouldn't we explore different alternatives for it?
Well,
In 1 year, I mean, you can talk about they were 5 off in their projections from 2008. Well, we had the deepest recession this country's known since the Depression, which helped them get there. Now you don't. You got the economy booming, as Commissioner Rothschild said. You got their projections off by over 100 in 1 year, and their whole outlook has changed on their 10-year plan in 1 year. So why wouldn't we do a reasonable view and look at every single building in the county? There's some smart people that could help us do it. There's some smart people in this room that could do it, and really look at different ways of utilizing these buildings so we're not spending $100 and some million on new schools that aren't needed, or dressing up buildings that are way beyond their useful age.
I'm open to any discussion. What I'm not open to is spending more money until we know what we're doing.
So I just want to check understanding. The plan was presented to us as 2 phases. Phase 1 was the Sheriff's Department, the BOE moving up, and then Parks and Recs were going to take over the facilities there, and then we were going to be left with somewhere between 40,000, I forget what the number was on the original, now it seems to drop to 25,000 square feet of space to use. And after hearing you guys discuss this tonight, it sounds like you're saying, basically, if you're not going to play ball with us and change the zoning, we're not going to move the Board of Ed there. Is that what you're telling us?
No, not at all. I'm saying that if
So the Board of Ed's moving there?
well, first of all, right now, that's the only plan that we've had, is the Board of Ed is moving there. I will tell you, when we put that plan together, it was with every expectation that we were going to take a portion of the building and be able to do something from a business standpoint. If that's not the case anymore, then I think at some point there's got to be some discussion about what we do with that remaining portion. So, again, this is to try to get an understanding, because clearly, whether it was our misunderstanding or yours or whatever, we were operating under a premise that is not the premise. So, as we're looking at about to spend an awful lot of money, I think we owe it to the taxpayers, we owe it to the town, we owe it to everybody to make sure that we understand what it is that this plan is going to look like.
What's the total square footage?
225, I think, that's usable.
225,000 is usable. So 200,000 of it you've got a plan for, and so 25,000 you don't have a plan for, and you're saying because I can't use that 25,000, it's going to be a deal breaker for me.
No. Okay, I think you're putting words in my mouth. I'm saying I'd like to know what the rest of the plan is before we continue down the path of spending more money. I'm sure you would do the same thing.
So,
Wayne, let me clarify. We have a problem. The Board of Commissioners has a problem because the latest price tag came, it was $28 million. And that was to take 90,000 square feet of space, which is pretty inefficient, and get, I guess, 60,000 square feet use. So we could build a brand new building for less than that. I mean, you can build a tilt-up building for $100 square foot. 60,000 square foot would be $6 million to put the Board of Education a tilt-up building. It doesn't have to be a school.
You're going to put them in a warehouse?
No, we're building beautiful buildings like Kenora Breaker only cost, these beautiful buildings up Westminster, seeing up over 97, are costing $70 to $100 a square foot to build. Ask Jack Liburn. That's all they're costing to build. The point is the cost of retrofitting this building is double the cost of new construction.
Yeah, I don't think that includes build-out. I don't think that includes everything that goes inside a building, but we're getting off
Dick, and anybody, I'm willing to sit down and talk to you, but, you know, you look at it, 25,000 square feet is a relatively small piece of that.
Very.
And what I'm hearing is that's the linchpin that you guys are drawing the line in the sand on.
Well, speaking for myself, I don't think we're drawing any line in the sand.
Okay.
And the reason it's only 25,000 square feet is because originally I think it was 40 or something of that sort. But because of, we're not trying to change the interior of the building, not tearing down any walls that are concrete walls and so forth. Anything that's...
Which makes sense.
Right. Anything that's easily movable, we can move, but we're not tearing down any, because it just doesn't make sense to do that, because it probably costs more than that to come up, you know, with that plan, even though it would be more efficient, it would cost us millions of dollars more. So that's why it's down to 25,000 square feet. I don't think that if we don't get that, I mean, I would like to have some help with the zoning. This idea here, I like the idea. Of course, I'm a solar and wind kind of guy, but so I like that idea. But that's not actually giving us any revenue, and not that, again, that's the deal breaker. But we need to work together to figure out what to do with this, and that's what it comes down to. Of course, I would like the zoning changed. If that's not what you guys are comfortable with, then that's not what you're comfortable with. If this something like this goes in there, because zoning doesn't have to be changed, maybe that'll work. I don't know right now. I'm not against talking about it. But like I said, when I first got here, my understanding is completely different a week ago than it is tonight. And I appreciate the clarification.
Sorry it wasn't clear from the beginning. I'm willing to sit down and talk with any one of you whenever. All of you, doesn't matter.
Okay. I just want to, there's a little bit of a conflict in some of the stories here, because you're talking about making sure we do a study of all the buildings in the county and what's available, and then someone else says, well, that's not necessarily true.
No, I think he's saying that if we did a study of all the buildings in the county, and we came back that North Carroll's still not in the plans, and,
right,
and it's a good plan, Wayne has a viable idea.
Okay.
That's
well, my point was going to be that's sort of what we were doing when we were taking up this project, if you will, trying to make sure that we get people in the right places by not having to put up brand new buildings. So that was the premise behind the start of attempting to do something. And I will tell you, the longer that the building sits there and is not used, the faster it's deteriorating.
We're well aware of how buildings deteriorate.
I understand that. So my point is, you're talking about, well, let's wait 6, 8, 9, 10 months, whatever it is. Now you've lost a little bit more time. So not that I'm arguing that case. I'm just saying if we're going to make a decision, then I'm of the same mindset as Commissioner Howard. Then we need to stop and look at something else, because the longer it sits there, the worse that it's going to be.
I don't think waiting 6 months should change the entire outlook for how that building's used, unless within that 6 months there's another plan that's put forward that makes it financially advantageous for you all, and we move forward with that plan. And it could be there could be a whole different set of facts that you're looking at. I mean, you're looking at one medium pizza here right now, but there could be 2 other small pies that should be in the equation, and we're not even talking about that.
But we could also take a year and do absolutely nothing.
Well,
we could just take a year and have all these discussions.
Well, we're not, but Doug, there's not going to be sitting there for a year, having all these discussions and nothing's done. I mean.
No, but what I'm saying is, I think it may, I mean, first of all, I don't know why we'd want to retrofit this for the Board of Ed if we think it's likely in 5 years it could be back online as a school. I don't know if you have any idea how much electrical work and all this drops and changing the HVAC for smaller workspaces. And a lot of that work that we're doing right now would have to be undone. Now, it's not permanent changes, but just to get the airflow right in the building, which I totally did not understand this, I'll admit that, but unfortunately I do now, is a whole different ballgame. If we think there's any possibility that there may be a school there in 5 years, we shouldn't put the Board of Ed there. And so all I'm saying is right now, if there are this many questions and we're about to spend tens of millions of dollars, my inclination would be to tell everybody to hold pat. Let's figure out what we're doing. You know, if there's more discussions, if the Board of Ed wants to take this up and consider that building, that's fine. If there's some other ideas that we can come up with, that's fine. But if we start a move, and this is going to be extraordinarily expensive, only to find out that we shouldn't have done it, or that we shouldn't do it, or that there was another configuration, that to me would be an even bigger concern. And even at that, we're still trying to figure out where the heck we come up with the extra money anyhow. I mean, we haven't even resolved that one, even if it was all things moving forward. So I think with some of the concerns, I just think we ought to, like you said, I mean, there are things that certainly having the community using the building in its condition right now makes lots of sense in terms of at least the rec councils and all that thing. There are things we can do to maintain it over the course of the next year. But before we start ripping out lines and putting in electricity and I want to know that we know what we're doing. And I just get the sense that really what I hear is that there's really a hope that it's much shorter than 10 years that we're going to need it as a school, in which case, why would we ever put the Board of Ed there?
Just, again, I got to go back to numbers, even though I guess a lot of people don't like to talk about them, but we're talking about spending $28 million to move 200 employees up there. That's insane. That's insane. What's the number? Man's Woodwork quote us $28 million.
No, and the Winchester.
Building, so moving the sheriff's department. So that's also moving the sheriff's department and the state's attorney into the Winchester building and moving the Board of Ed up there. It's not $28 million just for moving the Board of Ed up there. And in fact, excuse me?
What was the build-out cost then for the 200 employees?
North Carroll is 14 mil. That's what it was in the paper, according to Scott Moser.
That was if we moved IT, which I think
Correct.
Right, we're not thinking about moving IT. Right.
More 10.
Well, I mean, I think I'm willing to sit and talk with you. I'm willing to have the Board of Ed sit there and talk, but if they're going through this process to look at every building the county owns, why wouldn't this building be thrown in the mix?
Why couldn't we, if we're...
that.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Marcia Herbert.
I don't need a microphone because she does.
No, you.
We're recording.
I can answer that. On Wednesday, February 28th, we had our final parameters for redistricting and school closure committee. And at that time, if anybody looks on the TV, you can see when I said, please do not throw stones, but I would like for you all to consider North Carroll High School. And that's exactly what I said. And they said they did not like that idea because it was in the county's hands and that they had a new, that they were going to put the Board of Education there. My timeline is that they are going to meet and give us, we hope, their proposal by September, right, because we want to look at that in October, and then we want to vote the original Board of Education now and not have the new Board of Education have to vote on that by November. So timing is critical. If you want to change that in any way, shape, or form, that is not in my hands right now. You would have to contact Mr. Guthrie and tell him what is going on. And I did talk to him today about that. And that would be the process, that you would have to contact him and say that you're not going to probably use it for the Board of Education and to put that in the mix.
We're not saying that we wouldn't.
I asked, excuse me. So anyway, that would have to be brought in there for them to continue that, and they're going to work on that from now until September. So time is of the utmost of that.
I would approach Mr. Guthrie and say, for the time being, we would consider putting that back in the mix to look at it. Otherwise, you're going there.
Right.
If they decide, I mean, that's what you've all said, and that's what the plan would be. Maybe it's 6 months or 8 months later.
I just wanted to make sure that the timeline was clarified.
It's a straightforward choice to make, but, you know, like you said, there's other buildings in this neighborhood and others that you could look at that might be better served as a Board of Education office if that was a school again. And you're saving yourselves $100 million, Commissioner Rothschild, on the capital budget.
Possibly. But I'm all for talking about this, trying to get some more information and getting together. But I'd like it to be done within a 2-month period that we have before we come up with the next part of this. Because if this isn't going to go forward, if this Board of Education is not going to look at this for some other reason,
they'll look at it if you say look at it.
Well, then
Who funds that budget?
I'd like to get it done before that 2 months is up, so we know where we're moving forward. Because what I don't want to do, because government's really good at this, is delaying things over and over and over again when something new. Let's if you put a committee together, let's put it together quickly. Let's talk about it. Let's get some things out there. Let's include the Board of Ed. See what's coming up. So before the 2 month or 60-day period is up, where the architects are coming back to us with some recommendations. That way we have a very clear idea, and at that time we can move forward one way or the other.
It's also the budget that we have to worry about too. You know, we've got a budget to adopt by May, and you know, some of the thought pattern. I'm going to get stones thrown at me by a couple of my colleagues, but it has been, you know, talked about if we had to do this, that money's cheap right now, we'd bond some of this money in order to be able to do some of these capital improvements, which is the way that I look at it, capital improvements. So, you know, we should have some sort of a decision before May. So that, you know, the timing here is,
My evenings are
and I got to tell you, to
7 p.m. till midnight.
right, to hear him say that this committee's going to come up with recommendations by September, we'll see. I've seen them work before.
If you're talking a delay in a building of that size for a year, that's not going to change things drastically, and you're going to look at it and see if there's another better way to use it, because there is.
It's not the only piece of the puzzle, though. That's the problem.
We know. Well, supposedly, but that's the whole point. They're looking at every single building you own.
No. I
Every
think
single building they own.
No, he's talking about the issue we have with using the Winchester building, and so the bottom line is, and we're under pressure from the court. We've been under for 3 years now, and we got a little bit of latitude. To get the state's attorney out of there. Now, again, there's other ways that we could accomplish that as well, but not if we're going to move them up here. And so I think it's more complicated than that. I also think it's very dangerous about giving folks false hope about this process. And I think you all understand this process with the Board of Ed better than you're letting on. First of all, we had nothing to do with which schools were closed, how they were closed, anything like that. When that decision went through its public process, those buildings were remanded to us. And the bottom line is the only thing that we ever said was that we really needed to get, cost savings in the schools. Unless they can figure out a way to create cost savings by adding something back into the system, I don't understand how they could come to any conclusion that an additional building would make any sense. I don't know. Now, I'm not against them looking at that, but you need to understand that committee, by virtue of the way it's been structured with the Board of Ed, is designed to be relatively independent. Now, they did give them some marching orders. In terms of how the Board of Ed operates from us, it is very independent. If you think that we have control over lots of things that go on over on the Board of Ed side, we just don't. And so at the end of the day, I don't want to give people the false sense that somehow this is as easy as people are making it sound. I mean, I think we can publicly state right now, if the Board of Education and Mr. Guthrie can find a school use for that building, we would be thrilled.
But they're not going to even look unless you say look.
I don't think they're going to look because we say look. I think you really are mischaracterizing the relationship we have with them. I think, in fact, if it's not, if
Doug,
from
I'm willing to bet that if you say look, they're going to look. I think you're diminishing your authority and passing the buck if you say that you can't do that.
When a Board of Ed member brings it up, and honestly, the response.
And what did she say? She said they wouldn't look at it because you guys didn't say, yeah, look at it. 'cause you
Actually,
own
a
it.
big part of the discussion was how do we get to cost reduction by adding a building back into the mix? That was the conversation.
Well, maybe you're not adding a building into the mix. Maybe you're taking another building out of the mix. Let's think broad picture here.
Okay, you're talking about 3-4 year process. It's. I mean, you know how long it takes.
Well, no.
10 months, less than that.
No, the whole process took almost
We're doing-
3 years from start to finish.
All right, we're getting up to 9 o'clock.
Well, let me just comment on something Chris said. Chris, I agree. I happen to agree with you, but you see, we'd have to be very steely because personally, I don't want to spend 50 or 60 million to rehab East Middle.
Right.
So if the Board of Commissioners were to send a very strong message to the school system, we're not going to cough up the 60 million for East Middle, maybe they would reconsider reusing the school. I don't know.
You haven't
I'm
done
simply
that?
conjecturing, but I personally, I'll speak for myself, I'm willing to try.
That would be a great office building set.
So,
Haven't you said that though?
Building it.
all right,
I mean, how close is it to you guys?
all right. Well, there's been a lot of back and forth. I would love to meet with all of you, any of you. I'll buy lunch on a weekend. I'll buy dinner at night. Fine. But there's something that we can do here. And it doesn't mean that eventually the Board of Ed doesn't end up there, or that the plan doesn't move forward as you guys think it was originally intended. But I think we've been given this opportunity with this group that's out there looking at every single building in the county. Why wouldn't this be included? That is the question. And apparently all it would take is a letter from you, and I'm sure Ms. Herbert would make sure it's heard or included in the conversation.
I think that's what it would take, but we can certainly.
And I would be, well, there would be.
For a short period of time.
Yeah.
We don't have a lot of time on this, and it has to happen in the immediate future.
It's like 58 days.
Okay, let's go.
Second part.
Uh-oh.
We have a athletic field, and we need a fundraising campaign to get started somehow to generate $496,000.
Bring it on.
At the present time, I think we have 4,000 already committed, so we need to get together somehow and a joint effort and start a major fundraising campaign. So it's something to think about, but
Who is your chief marketing officer?
Chief?
Huh?
Jeff Daggett.
Okay.
I mean, as far as we know, it's Jeff, the Rec and Parks is leading that adventure, but, you know, in the meantime, if we don't get the money, I think somebody can probably mow the grass. But it was our intent to put a really nice facility there to enhance and bring people into the community. That was our intent. So we certainly would want to continue that effort, but, you know.
So, I mean, yeah, we're all game. And I think that you would find the town writing you some kind of check for that. But $500,000 is a lot of money, and I don't, you know, I'd love to hear what Jeff is marketing, what he's thinking, and how, you know, who they're targeting and how they're going to go about doing this.
Well, it's only $496 now, Chris.
Okay, that works.
496, we can have Nevin state.
Yeah, right. You're talking to the wrong Nevin. All right. Well, we do really appreciate you coming, and I'm serious. I'm willing to meet and continue this on, but I think you guys can play a very significant role in this. We'll take a 5-minute break, let everybody talk, and then start back up. And we can carry on conversations after we're done. I appreciate you all sitting through that, and I think hopefully that was good back and forth. Next on the agenda is discussion of Main Street revitalization projects and the poles for traffic control devices. Tammy, I think that's in your report.
Right now, we've been speaking with State Highway. State Highway has plans to, well, they've already put up a new pole at Northwoods Trail.
Yeah, right.
And of the next 3 intersections, they're, what did I do with my email? I just had it in front of me. They had plans for replacing like one at each intersection, only 1 pole. So we asked them if we could paint the poles. State Highway kindly said no, because they don't want to maintain them.
Right.
We didn't pursue that any farther. It's like, hey, could we have an agreement where we would maintain the paint? But first off, State Highway said, no, you're not painting our poles because we don't want to maintain them, because they are keeping the traffic poles, traffic device, control device poles. So we did ask them about if the town came in and put new poles and upgraded the ones they want to do, not Northwoods Trail because we missed that one, but if we upgraded the 3 poles they were going to put in, and then we paid for brand new poles, the other 5 poles, brand new poles are around $18,000 a piece. So I think that was like
About 100.
90 grand.
Yeah,
90 grand.
Yeah, 90 grand, about $100,000.
Right.
And then upgrading the poles.
But then they want to charge us on top of that, right?
Well, possibly. I never got a definite answer. There's always a chance that maybe we could try to redline the project or maybe put in the new poles later, but they could possibly also charge us for re-engineering the project to put in those new poles.
Whatever. I don't
To
see
change
that.
the
but-
color of poles.
Let's get a price.
You would have to change the poles.
Well, she gave you
themselves.
one, 18 grand, 90 grand.
18 grand per pole, because you would go in new. That's the new ones, not the upgrade of the other ones, but about 5 of them would have to be new.
So if the 3 they were going to put in, it's 18,000 additional?
No.
No. Those would be upgrade. I don't know what the upgrade cost is of the 3 they're putting in. The other ones were not being replaced, so we would have to replace them completely with a brand new pole, which is about 18,000 a piece.
So 100 grand rounded.
That's probably including the upgrading.
And that's just a
I would
pole,
think.
that's not installation.
Plus if they charge you to re-engineer.
And that's something they're still discussing. Could we redline it? Could we do it later? Would we have to re-engineer the project? Because if we had to re-engineer the project, then it would delay the project. So they never got back to me with that
I'm
definite.
sorry, but that just does not fly.
Yeah, I don't
So
know.
that, I'm saying, I'm just relaying the message of what
Okay,
they said.
but you'll deliver the message back that that doesn't fly because they're poles and you have the same wires in the same location, just running through different poles. So how does that require any kind of engineering work?
And they could redline it, just saying, okay, as you go through, you're adding some more poles.
Okay,
So that's
So you
different.
know, the same with the pipe, same message, will stay consistent.
But are we, that was my question
Question
to
is,
the
do you,
council.
for 100 grand, do you want black poles?
Well, when you
versus-
talk installation, it could be 150.
Well, it's already being installed though, right?
No,
No,
there's
'cause now
5
you're
that are
adding
not
5
being
new.
replaced.
Okay,
So you're,
5 are new.
so you're getting up toward 150 grand for these poles.
Did they give you a price for installation?
They did not. You took pulling teeth just to get the price of the pole.
Which I think's wrong.
But they're running new traffic lights on the existing poles and new wiring in those poles, correct?
Some of
Because
them.
they're going up to LED, I would imagine, right?
I didn't ask that.
Is it a written estimate?
No.
No, it is just an email estimate of this is approximately how much they cost.
Unless you get something written and there's something, I don't think we should act. Because it's got to be in black and white, because they're just saying $18,000.
Well, I just-
It might be, the
Well, the
engineering.
question
it
is,
might
do you
be.
want
It's too
Tammi
many
to
mites.
continue down that road? Do you think this is a, lack of a better word, a wise expenditure of town money for black poles versus metallic
Well,
poles?
once again, I think we discussed 3 intersections, correct? But we could do 1, or we could do 2. Do
Honestly,
we have to do 3?
honestly, no. I don't think it's a wise way to go. I don't think it's a wise expenditure. Just my
Shame to spend
opinion.
all this money on Main Street and, we don't have the ballards, we don't have the pocket parks, we don't have,
We don't have the benches, we don't have the
Yeah.
trash cans.
and
It's
now we're going to have the same ugly poles.
And the other option is I can push to say, look, hey, can we get an MOU if we pay the cost to paint them and we maintain the paint if something happens? I could push that avenue.
That's fine.
Push that avenue and see
Yes.
what happens. All right? Other unfinished business?
No.
Award of contract for janitorial services? Back at you.
I got a question on this. Who, are either one of these our,
Existing? No.
Yes.
okay.
Oh, which
Oh,
one?
yes. What is it? The bottom?
Good.
Yeah,
Multi-corp.
Multicorp is the one we have now.
Multicorp is the one that we have now.
Yes.
Okay, then I don't have any questions.
What are they doing?
I'm done.
What do they do?
It explains everything.
Where do they clean? What do they clean?
They clean the police station, they clean town hall, town offices, and Public Works.
They dust, vacuum, remove trash that's there to the extent Public
Shampoo,
Works hasn't. Carpet, every once in a while they come through and do the carpets.
Yeah, I think we're gonna put in, like, it once a year, I think was the bid
Shampoo.
for shampoo and carpets and
How's this
certain.
just compared to what they do now, price-wise?
I think it's about the same.
They clean weekly, bi-weekly?
weekly.
Do they do a good job?
They do. I mean, you know, we've had some discussions, but they do a good job.
Are they responsive when you have a
Yes.
problem?
Yes,
Okay.
they are.
For half the price of the other guy, it's hard to.
Yeah, it's hard to.
They're not even in the
I'll make a
ballpark.
motion to accept the bid from Multi-Corp.
Thank you. Second?
Second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Discussion of the solid waste disposal services.
Where's Lorraine when you need?
I think there's a little chart for you to look at. There's the email from Lorena to look at. Whatever the tonnage is, I think it's still appropriate that we have the community yard sale 3 times a year.
Yes.
That we don't back that off. The question is just how many times, or if you want to extend on the backside the yard waste pickup through the middle of December.
Well, I'd suggested maybe starting it later than April and then going into December.
I would say you still got to start in April. I mean, as soon as the weather breaks, people are going to be out there working on the yards.
Now,
It's
how
just
much
a
are
matter
they-
you have to
How much are
add.
they charged to take away this yard waste? I mean,
It'll be subject to the new contract
It's
that we
just-
bid, but we got to put parameters out there, and I think if you're going to change your parameter, you would keep it April 1st, but you might add, at one point, we stopped at the end of October, and then we
Right.
extended it through November.
Yard waste pickup costs a flat rate of $21,526 per year, divided by 35 pickups equals $615 per pickup.
and then they're taking
Bargain.
it to the landfill. and
That's a
probably dumping
bargain.
it for free, right?
Yep,
Let's extend it April to December.
through middle of December. I don't see anybody out working on their yard in Christmas, really
We're
don't.
looking
Middle of, really,
My
seriously?
neighborhood.
Middle of December? Middle of December, you
We go
think?
to the end of November now.
So you're adding
A lot of
one or
complaints.
two?
Really?
Of yard waste
lot of
not
places.
picking up their leaves, because we had so many,
Okay.
Leaves, okay.
All
we've
right.
had so many,
Christmas trees.
2 weeks on the end.
add 2 weeks.
Okay.
For $615, Chris, you don't want to go 4 weeks?
No, no, but there's snow, the ground's
Compromise
covered.
on 3?
Sure. We'll pick up yard waste on Christmas Eve.
Well, Wayne, and when this
Technically, you only
ends,
go to
then,
the 21st.
Okay.
3 weeks.
You don't want to know where they're going to dump it.
All right.
Well, the other thing I wanted to bring up was the container idea. I've been thinking about this.
Toters?
Yeah, the recycling containers that we have now are not working. I mean, we're constantly picking up, I'm talking about the little ones that we have that were given out, I guess, by the town at one time, but
They still are.
they're not working because it's blowing stuff all over the area. I'm constantly picking up recyclables in our neighborhood.
So what do you want?
Something with a lid. Let's say a blue can with the lid, like, I guess what the county has now.
Can we buy something with a lid, Kev?
Oh, I'm sure they're available, yes. He brings up a valid point. 3 weeks ago, we had a contractor go into Dam 505 and clean out 2 dump truckloads of recyclables.
It's all recyclables, right?
And you go down there today, we'll need to do it again. He brings up a very valid point.
All right.
but we can also put it in a contract where the trash company provides it.
Provides it, right?
And therefore, they're constantly replacing it if something's wrong. Because they are expensive.
Well, and I've heard some people say that a lot of these cans are getting damaged by the contractors and all that. Again, I've had the same can for 15 years, 2 cans, and it's never been damaged, but obviously somebody's are. So I think, again, putting them in the thing that they're taking care of them, they're providing them, they're gonna change them out would probably be the best option.
And price it out both ways, town providing and.
Yeah.
and
2 options.
When I got this email from Lorena about the information about them providing the totes, I kind of pressed her on, what costs are they paying? And in her neighborhood, it's $6 per month to rent a 96-gallon trash toter with a hinged lid and wheels that they can use, and they also provide a recycle toter that's rent-free. And they pay a $50 security deposit up front. And then the bill for the rental comes monthly to the homeowner from the company. So the town isn't involved with it. So
But if we just do recycling, then it wouldn't,
But
they
she
wouldn't charge
pays
that.
for her own trash. We pay for the people's trash as part of the tax bill. So it's a little different.
Okay, she didn't specify that.
Yeah. She pays 60, almost 60 a quarter. Trash is not cheap. All right, so we got 2 different bids there on the recycling containers with lids. All right, that's it for that. On to approval of bond council engagement for the 2018 general obligation borrowing related to the light poles, not the light poles with the traffic lights, but the actual street lights. Thank you. You see Lindsay's letter to us. Yep. I think it's appropriate and fairly standard.
And rather long.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, they're lawyers. They get paid by the word.
So you need a motion to approve the
Yes, sir.
engagement of the council, so moved.
Second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Good, thank you. Other new business? Introduction of ordinance 524 and an ordinance concerning a general obligation bond for the Main Street revitalization project, which is related to the streetlights.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? And then, follow-up piece on that is as we start spending money now, this adoption of this resolution makes it bondable. Introduction and adoption of Resolution 2018-01, a resolution concerning the declaration of official intent for the general obligation bond.
So moved.
Second.
Any further discussion?
Yes. There was one that was in the packet, then there was another one that people got on top of their tonight. I suggested one change be made to Section 1B. Up in the recitals under number 1, they talked about and the CX Railroad line north of Upper Ford Lane, and in B, they just said the CX Railroad line. I requested they add in north of Upper Ford Lane, so the one that has the north of Upper Ford Lane is the one that we're going to be approving. Okay? Thank you.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? All right. Public comments? Y'all hung out for a long time. Really appreciate it. I don't know. We'll see how that works, but I definitely will meet with whomever, whenever they would like to. Huh? Yes, I am aware. But I thank you for your patience with me. Motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
All those in favor? Anyone opposed? Again, thank you all. And no baby yet.